this isn't just about Ross. This is a threat to everyone. It's time to take action. It's time to free ourselves. It's time to free Ross. Ross. Ross.
My son, Ross Ulbricht, is serving a double life sentence plus 40 years without the possibility of parole for all nonviolent charges, first-time offender, for his role in and creating the Silk Road website, which was basically an online free marketplace that sold lots of stuff. It was an eBay-like place. There are many legal items sold there, although you'd never know that from the media or the prosecution or the trial. So you can see there was apparel, books, electronics. It's basically what people wanted to exchange, as long as it didn't hurt a third party. Whoops. So some things were restricted. This is from the trial exhibit, and we blew it up so you could actually read it, of what was prohibited. Things that were not voluntary and did not adhere to the non-aggression principle were not allowed. And top-level admin told me they would scour the site regularly to kick them off. So there was nothing to do with pedophilia or child porn at all. There was no stolen, oh boy, no stolen items, no anything violent. And Ross wasn't about becoming a drug kingpin, which is one of his charges. I don't know too many drug kingpins who adhere to the non-aggression principle and voluntary interaction. Here he is. He brought Ron Paul to Penn State in 2008 for that election. Ross is kneeling in the bottom left. Dr. Paul's in the center. And he went door to door collecting signatures for him. He donated money when he could to his campaign. Ross is about freedom. He's about freedom and privacy. And he was about Bitcoin. The only means of exchange on the site was Bitcoin. He saw the potential for monetary freedom through cryptocurrency. And that is why many people have told me, and Brian Ehan, his book here, wrote that Ross is the second most important person in Bitcoin history after Satoshi. But Ross wasn't the only one who saw the potential for monetary freedom. Very powerful people, like Senator Chuck Schumer, saw it and were quite threatened by this new upstart currency that they couldn't control. Chuck Schumer was on the Senate Finance Committee, the Banking Committee, and he's totally in bed with Wall Street and the cartel, as Ed Griffin calls it, of the people who control the money. And he went after Silk Road and Bitcoin and called for their takedown. And the full power of the government was unleashed. The NSA came out last March. It came out last March that the NSA was tracking Bitcoin users, not terrorists, which is what they're supposed to be doing. Bitcoin users, a few months before the Ross was arrested, which, if you were tracking Bitcoin users in 2013, you were tracking Silk Road. So now Chuck Schumer, by the way, has had a whole 180. He's like, oh, we should legalize marijuana because, hey, if you're not hurting somebody else, what's the harm? And I'm like, Chucky, have you been reading the Silk Road Manifesto? Wow. Meanwhile, he takes money from the private prisons who are caging people for marijuana and other drug crimes, offenses, whatever. So that's Chuck Schumer. The whole philosophy that Bitcoin was about and the site was about was well known to the people that have caged Ross. This is a quote from the judge who said, "We know that you started this site for philosophical reasons, and I'm just not sure that's a philosophy you've left behind. So let me get this straight. You're partially caging someone for the rest of their life for their philosophy of voluntary interaction and free trade? This is diametrically opposed to the First Amendment." And I started realizing Ross was a political prisoner. And I didn't quite sink in for me until I saw the sentences of the other Silk Road defendants. The guy who was convicted of being the biggest drug seller on Silk Road got 10 years. He actually was convicted of selling drugs. Ross was not. Sorry. And it goes down from there, down to, I'm so sorry, Blake Benthall, who was running Silk Road 2.0. I'm going to get through this talk. I want you to hear what I have to say. And, oh, there it is. Great. He was running Silk Road 2.0, and the government said it was bigger than Silk Road, that it sold more drugs in a month. He spent 13 days in custody. This is from the Bureau of Prisons. There's Ross. It says his release date is life. It should say death. He has a walking death sentence. That's what he has. And Blake Benthall, the date on there is 13 days after he was arrested. He's free. Now, if Ross is so dangerous that he cannot be released ever in his entire life because of drugs, then why is Blake Benthall walking around? You know, I don't want him in jail, don't get me wrong, but hello, this is not about drugs. This is political. You tell me. We have Chuck Schumer. He called for the takedown of Silk Road. He, in public, before trial, congratulated Eric Holder. Good job, you got your man. I'm like, hang on, don't we have a presumption of innocence? Don't we have a trial? It's one of those antiquated things. The main prosecutor was Preet Bharara, who was Chuck Schumer's collaborator and cohort and his chief counsel for years and owed his job to Chuck Schumer. And then we have the judge, Catherine Forrest, who also owed her job to Chuck Schumer and was recommended by him to the bench. Ross was brought from California, where he was arrested and lived, back to Schumer's state to be tried and sentenced and prosecuted by his people, by Schumer's people. And then now he's in prison. Now this is a photo that Ross organized. Everyone in this picture is serving a life sentence, non-violent life sentence for drug offenses. So the guy standing behind Ross is Sean. I've met his daughter, his sister. I've met Sean. He's in there because of this evil third strike bill that Clinton put in. He got life for user amounts of heroin. The guy's not a dealer. He's an addict, or he was. He was a user. He got life. Third from the left is Tony DeJohn. Life for marijuana that an informant said he sold him 13 years ago. I know his mom. I helped her get a petition up for Tony. Totally nonviolent. The guy on the far left is Jay. I know his wife and his daughter and him. They were so elated when the first STEP Act passed because this awful third strike thing changed from life sentence to 25 years, and he served almost 25 years, and they were jumping for joy, literally in the prison lobby. He's going to get out. And then they found out it's not retroactive. It's like saying, oh, well, slavery's bad and it's no longer legal, but oh, sorry, you were a slave before? Sorry, doesn't apply to you. Unbelievable. Jose is going around kneeling on the right. Ross said he's I've met Jose. I've met his sister. Sweetest, most gentle guy. He's in there. His third strike was residue on a dollar bill. We could all be in there for that. And then, I'm skipping a few people, but then there's Ross. Here I am visiting him in Florence. It was a maximum security prison where they put lifers, no matter how nonviolent and peaceful you are, but also violent gangs and very dangerous criminals. It was a very violent place. During the time Ross was there was a murder, there were multiple stabbings, beatings, all kinds of stuff went on in there. That's a sniper tower of one of many behind me in that picture, and 3 layers of razor wire behind me. A few years ago, I was in an eerily reminiscent place. I went on a speaking tour in Eastern Europe, and they brought me to Auschwitz. This is Auschwitz. It's a very grim experience. And I overheard a tour guide say to his group, "The lesson here is watch your politicians. This wasn't that long ago." And I would say, watch your government, because, whoops, wrong way, this is happening now. I'm hitting the wrong button, I'm sorry, here we go. This is happening now. Since the drug war, the prison population has metastasized 800%. They are stuffing the prisons with nonviolent drug offenders. It's, I think, over 60% now. They're turning parts of the United States into a gulag. The prison population, if it were a state, would be a higher population than 11 states. It's like its own state, the United States of incarceration. It's horrible. And the drug war is totally fueling this. Life sentences have quintupled since the drug war. There are over 17,000 people like Ross, according to the Sentencing Project, who are doing life for nonviolent offenses. When I was growing up, nobody got life for nonviolent offenses. You had to be a mass murdering maniac to get a life sentence, and hardly anybody got them. I mean, it was rare. Now it's like no big deal. That judge, he was her 5th life sentence that year, and it was in May that she sentenced him. She had 7 months to go. And the thing is, of course, it doesn't work. And so the United States keeps doing this. And we are the biggest incarcerator in the world because of the drug war. That's what's fueling it. And of course, it doesn't work. People are still doing drugs. They can't even keep drugs out of the prison. It's been going on for 45 years, more now. America's longest war. Cost taxpayers over $1 trillion with a T dollars to accomplish nothing as far as stopping drug use. So why? Why would that happen? Oh, and the other thing is, of course, prohibition increases violence. It did when alcohol was prohibited. That when they stopped and repealed prohibition, violence steadily decreased over the next 11 years. You don't have Smirnoff and Absolute vodkas having street wars and shooting it out about who's going to sell vodka on that block. Same deal now. It causes violence, it causes death and misery, as we've seen only too recently here. So why? Why would the government keep doing this? And the question's always cui bono. Who benefits? Who benefits? So we have the police unions and the prison guards. It's a huge jobs program. Where I have been staying, I'm going to leave because Ross now has been moved to a safer place in Tucson, thank God. But I'm going to move there. But it's a little town that has 12 prisons in it or around it. If the drug war ended and people were released, that place would go into a severe depression. It's a jobs program, and then there's all these other subsidiary people and feeding off of the trough, And of course, then there's the banks who launder money, HSBC, millions and millions and millions of dollars in drug money slap on the wrist. And then there are the drug cartels, as opposed to the banking cartels. And of course, jacks up the price, and they make a ton of money too because it's illegal. So, and also just follow the money with these people. These are the 5 top lobbyists for against marijuana legalization. So again, we have Chuck Schumer's friends, the private prison. We have the police unions, the prison guard unions. That's the big jobs program. The pharmaceutical companies, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you know how great cannabinoids are. I mean, they're curing cancer with that. And it's illegal. Well, the pharmaceutical companies are fighting it becoming legal. And then there's the alcohol and beer companies, too. I guess enough people aren't drinking, or whatever. So we took this to the Supreme Court. Ross's case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and his team brought up 2 very important issues. One was a Fourth Amendment violation by the government, which basically now the government has full reign and ability to delve into your internet browsing history, habits, and anything you do on the internet without a warrant, in secret, with no oversight, no probable cause. They can just go in there and scarf up what they want and use it how they want. And so, there's a lot of relevant information. Your medical records and interests, your philosophical and political proclivities, your sexual orientation, your religious orientation. And they can use it to blackmail officials. They can use it to persecute political enemies. They can do whatever they want with it, with no oversight and no disclosure. This was presented to the Supreme Court through Ross's case, and they chose not to address it. So our Fourth Amendment protections in the digital age are being just shredded, if there's any left. The other issue was a Sixth Amendment violation, because the judge, who was quoted in the video, and she's the one who didn't like Ross's philosophy, she used uncharged and unconvicted allegations, most notably murder for hire, against Ross to bolster her sentence, her life sentence. It justified it. But a jury never ruled on this. It was never even brought to trial. It was just discussed, and then in Maryland, there was an indictment that contained it. That's been dismissed. It's gone, and but she used it successfully to justify her sentence. And even the prosecutor said, as he's blabbing on and on about it, well, he hasn't been charged, and there have been no murders, but just trust us. We're telling you, this is for real. He did this thing, but no proof, nothing. And of course, the jury's like, oh, it must be true. They're talking about it in court without charging it. Even the alleged victim of this murder for hire, they made him pose like a corpse and stuff. He says he doesn't think Ross did it either. It's Curtis Green, a top-level admin. He doesn't think Ross did it. So the Sixth Amendment was violated, and apparently this has been happening for decades, that a judge can just decide, well, it wasn't brought up in court. The jury didn't rule on it. It wasn't proven, but I believe it. I believe it. So I'm going to go ahead and use it anyway. And this is why the Sixth Amendment was written, to protect the accused from rogue judges that do this. We're supposed to have a jury of our peers of 12. That's why we have 12 people, not one person deciding. That's what she did. And the Supreme Court didn't mind. There's so much to this case that I'm just touching a few things, just real quick. The other thing the judge did was not allow the fact that 2 corrupt agents, one DEA, who, by the way, was responsible for submitting the murder for hire material, who is now in prison, and a Secret Service agent, had full reign as part of their investigation. They were at the core of the investigation. They had full reign on the site. They could change passwords, keys. They stole a ton of money. They could change anything on the site that was written. And they could act as aliases, including the top admin, Dread Pirate Roberts. They could act as Dread Pirate Roberts. This was not allowed to be known to the jury. The jury had no idea they existed. And then it all came out 2 months after trial. And what came out after trial as well is proof that DPR accessed Silk Road after Ross was in solitary. So this question of who is DPR and how many of them are there comes up a lot. And it's like, well, the general consensus is there were many people using the DPR handle, but Ross is getting the full brunt of all the blame and for this. Again, Curtis Green, he goes, well, yeah, there were lots of DPRs. I was DPR once. I'm like, wow. Lots of people acted as DPR. This case is so complicated, but it's kind of interesting too. And we put together a narrative. Oh wait, one more thing. Also, what came up after trial was that a lot of evidence was deleted because a full file was found later that was a very important part of the whole thing. And it was deleted by someone with top-level access. We think it was probably another rogue agent, another corrupt agent. So that's another thing, was the evidence that the jury saw was tainted. So this is all it's something we put together called Railroaded, the Targeting and Caging of Ross Ulbricht. It's on our website. You can read it. It has almost 400 footnotes. It's based solely on the record. It's not my opinion or Ross's opinion, it's just trying to make the record so people can actually access it because it's so complicated. So it's put together in a very readable form, but you can also listen to it like a podcast. And a narrator who volunteered his time, he was great. He's a professional. It's great listen. And some people say, I started listening, I couldn't put it down. I mean, it's really riveting. So I suggest and hope that you'll take a look. A lot of people ask me how Ross is doing and care about him, and I so appreciate that. He's changed. He's older. He's wiser. But he's still himself. He's a very wonderful person. He's sweet, he's friendly, he's fun, he's funny. And he's just compassionate. He's got a big heart. And he helps people in prison. He's just that kind of guy. And he works hard to stay positive every day, not be bitter, and just keep his eye on the prize. And he inspires me too. And he sent me a message for you, and I'd like to read that now. Hi, everyone. This note is hard to write. I want to be there with all of you so bad. I've been locked up the better part of a decade now. It's hard. Every day wears on me a little more. I have to believe there is a happy ending to all of this, where I'm there in person talking about it in the past tense with you. But when I meet gray-haired men who've been down 20 or 25 years, also condemned to die behind these walls, it's hard not to see myself in them. My soul shudders and I cling to the hope of deliverance, of some miracle lifting me from this pit. The only way I can cope is to accept the worst-case scenario, that I'll grow old and die in here, having spent about 50 years in prison. I weep for what could have been. However, I want you to know, as hard as this road is, it would be much harder if I was forgotten and left to my fate. Instead, after all this time, you're still pulling for me. You still believe in the possibility of liberty and the victory of my release will be. I don't know when or if it will come, but if it does, years and years of pain will be washed away. It will be a time of celebration for us all. I hope to see you then. With love and respect, Ross. Wow, thank you. I'm going to tell him about that. This case isn't just about Ross. It's a case about liberty at its most fundamental, about putting people in cages. We're talking about very fundamental battle for our freedom. And as Scott Greenfield said, it's also the future and the birth of digital law. They're working this out in the courts between the drug war and all of these other issues, cryptocurrency, all these issues are kind of in flux right now. We're at a turning point in history. And we have to decide which way we're going to go. I know you guys know which way you want to go, but is it toward more government intrusion and control, or is it going to be towards freedom and innovation and exciting things? And we're at a pivotal point in history. It's very important. Please help us. Please, if you haven't, sign the petition. I know some people say it won't help, it doesn't matter. Hey, if I could go to the president and go, 500,000 people think you should consider this, he might. You never know. I've got to try everything. If any of you, so please sign it, please share it. It's online, freeross.org. There's a big red banner. If anybody has political contacts at any level, you never know. Please let me know. Get in touch with me. Of course, we always need money for lawyers. And, please spread the word. We need to change the narrative. There's this narrative about Ross as some kind of kingpin thug. Couldn't be further from the truth. And he's got a Twitter account, @RealRossU. You can get a sense of who Ross is from that Twitter account. And also, there's 100 letters on our website from people who know Ross. You read those and you're like, what is he doing in there? Please spread the word, follow us on social media. And just thank you. Thank you so much to Anarchapulco, to the freedom movement, to anarchy movement. I wouldn't be standing here. We wouldn't be where we are if it weren't for you. So we're so grateful to have you walking beside us in this really important struggle. So thank you so much. Thank you. By the way, where is he? This man has been such a friend to us. I just want to give you a little, and has talked about Ross so eloquently and really gets who Ross is, which is an idealist, which is what Jeffrey has said so many times. And actually, you've spoken to Ross and know him from before, so that's so cool. Anyway. Oh, 0. I got right on time. Okay, thanks.